So as we wait and wait and wait for a 41-year-old to make a decision on where he's going next season, it got me thinking about the best and worst NBA front offices right now. So let's talk about it. I'm not referring to like the Philadelphia 76ers who swooped in and got Jaylen Brown this offseason, or maybe the Portland Trail Blazers who got Ja Morant this offseason, but the teams that have had a pattern of bad moves or a pattern of good moves. Those are the teams that I want to dive into in this video and talk about what they've been doing over the past few years, whether good or bad. And I can't lie, this video is heavily inspired by my own team's failure to have good off seasons recently, the Golden State Warriors, of course. But I will be talking about other teams and highlighting other teams other than the miserable team that I do have to watch next season. So let's get into one of the worst NBA front offices over the past few years, which is New Orleans Pelicans. And that shouldn't be a surprise because since the 2019 offseason, when they traded away Anthony Davis, when they drafted Zion Williamson, who is supposedly the core player that they want to build around, and it seems like they've been trying to build around, they've had exactly 2 winning seasons. In 22-23, they finished 42-40, and in the 23-24 season, they finished 49-33. And what have they done since then? Basically sat pat and regressed as a result. If we go back to the 2019 offseason when they traded away Anthony Davis, let's look at what they got for him. Brandon Ingram, who's basically bounced around the league and become a journeyman, even though he's a good player, he's an all-star, but he's still a journeyman all-star, basically, where no one wants to keep him for more than 1 season. Then they have Lonzo Ball, who cannot even keep a job in the league anymore, which part of it is a result of injury, but still. Josh Hart, who went on to win a championship with the New York Knicks, and multiple first-round picks, which later facilitated the CJ McCollum trade, who they don't even have anymore. So they have basically nothing left from the Anthony Davis trade, and none of it contributed to even getting past maybe the 7th seed. And then in 2021, which was, 5 years ago, they drafted Herb Jones, and they drafted Trey Murphy. Since then, both of those players have been in constant trade rumors, but stayed on the team, despite, I'm sure, getting good packages in return that other teams would have taken. And what has it resulted in? It's resulted in frustration for the players, for other teams, for the team itself. It's resulted in frustration all over the place without any benefits to winning in the organization. I mean, at this point, Trey Murphy III has been in so many trade rumors that I doubt he's ever going to be traded. It's going to be one of those players that is always in constant trade rumors who just never gets traded. And that's just really sad for a team that, let me remind you, finished 26-56 last season and has literally regressed over the past few years and is in a Western Conference that is just getting better. And yes, this is a pattern for this front office because we all know what happened last season when they traded an unprotected pick to the Atlanta Hawks, and we don't know what Kingston Flemings is going to become. Obviously, he looked what he looked like in Summer League, and we don't know if he's going to be better than Derek Queen or who's going to be better overall in the long term. But arguably that was a bad trade. And then this season, it gets even better because after finishing, like I said, 26-56, what do? They re-sign a guy who's literally this close to retirement, averaged 4 points, and played a whopping 12 games for them last season. But in contrast to the Pelicans, one of the best front offices in the NBA over the past few years has been, of course, the OKC Thunder. In the same offseason that the Pelicans drafted Zion Williamson, the Thunder traded away Paul George, of course, for stuff that included Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, who is now their MVP candidate and one of the best players in the world. But unlike the Pelicans front office, who stood pat with Zion Williamson for the past 7 years, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander was built around by Sam Presti. He, of course, used various first-round picks from the Russell Westbrook trade, from picks from the Nuggets, the Heat, the Rockets, to draft Chet Holmgren, J-Dub, Cason Wallace, guys that actually contributed to their championship. You could say that that's good drafting, but they didn't hit on all their picks. That's the point. They had so many picks that they were bound to hit on some of the picks that they had. Of course, they didn't hit on guys like Ousmane Dieng, but we don't know if they hit on guys like Thomas Schwarber yet or Brooks Barnhizer. We don't know yet. But the point is that they had so much in their stockpile that they were able to not only make trades with those picks, which we'll get to, but they were also able to draft well guys that would contribute to their run eventually. Another thing that this front office does well is that they're not afraid to hold on to players. Obviously, they drafted Josh Giddey, and he was not bad for them. He was a decent player, and you could see him probably fitting in with the roster. But they thought that he wouldn't help them get over that hump to win the championship, and they didn't hesitate to trade him to the Bulls for Alex Caruso, who obviously was an integral part of their championship. And then this offseason, they traded away Isaiah Joe, who brings a lot of shooting off of the bench and was a huge part of their championship run. And they traded away Aaron Wiggins as well, who had a lot of fans in that locker room. And they did that largely to manage the luxury tax, but they're adapting to the CBA and what's going on in the NBA right now while trying to become better for their future and for the now. That is the sign of a good front office. Not to mention that they just traded away Lou Dort, which could not have been easy because he is one of the most fan favorite players in a Thunder uniform probably over the past, it feels like 10 years. But yet they traded it away because they knew they had to in order to get better. They're not afraid to do that. And that brings me to a team that is deathly afraid of making moves. And of course, that is my favorite team. We've reached the part of the video where I talk about my favorite team. Look at this tweet from Jay. Every Warriors offseason since 2022 chip. In 2023, they traded Jordan Poole for Chris Paul. Very bad trade, obviously, in hindsight. And the trade would not have even happened if they didn't succumb to what Draymond Green has done to the organization over the past few years, which has influenced it greatly in a bad way. I mean, the whole league sees how he's talking about Yaxel right now, right? He is definitely threatened by a guy who is way younger than him, who has no business even being a threat to Draymond Green. But yet he is, because that's just who Draymond Green is. And the fact that he was able to influence the organization to trade away one of our best young players, one of the guys that we drafted and developed over the years, because he was the one who punched him, still does not sit right with me today. But again, a trade that we definitely lost in the long run. And then we get to the 2024 offseason when they didn't want to re-sign a franchise legend, Klay Thompson, who should have retired, honestly, with the Warriors and should have been a one-team guy for his career. Now, whether Klay Thompson is still a good NBA player anymore is up to debate, but it doesn't matter because of the sentiment that was lost between the two sides of the front office and Klay. And then they didn't want to trade for Paul George, which probably that's a good decision, but still, they didn't make a move. That's the point. They didn't want to trade pods and picks for Lauri Markkanen, which I made a long video back when I first started this channel about how they didn't want to trade JK, how I didn't want them to trade JK for it. But I was so willing for them to trade pods for Lauri. And again, they didn't. And then last season, we get the infamous Jonathan Kuminga drama, which basically prevented them from making a move last offseason because they were waiting for that to resolve. Then we traded him away for Porzingis, who we'll wait to see how that ends up being. And then this offseason, we're waiting on a 41-year-old's decision when, let's be honest, he's probably not coming to our team. And this is all while Steph Curry, one of the best players in the world, and our franchise legend, is getting older and older and older. He still plays at a high level, but we can't support him with the pieces around him. That is so frustrating. Of course, I will give to the Warriors credit that they do draft well, especially recently. They drafted Moody, who was actually having his best year before he got injured. And then they've drafted Yaxel, of course, who looks like he'll be a good player in the league. They drafted Pods, who, even though he gets a lot of criticism, is a decent NBA player. They drafted DeSantos, who was a steal at the pick that he was drafted at. So they've done a good job overall. But the problem is that drafting that late in the lottery or even beyond the lottery is just not enough to support Steph Curry, to give him a chance at winning a championship. You need to make trades, you need to make moves, you need to make free agency signings for that to happen. And that just has not happened since Kevin Durant came here. And then very quickly, I want to mention one team that has done extremely well over the past few years as a front office, and that is the Boston Celtics. Now, let's ignore the Jaylen Brown trade because we don't know the whole story about that trade and what's going to happen in the future based on that trade or whether they were doing it for a certain reason. But beyond that, ever since 2013, when they traded with the Brooklyn Nets, when they traded away Kevin Garnett and they got the picks that became Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, they've done a good job of trying and adapting to what's needed in the NBA, like I mentioned, for the OKC Thunder. For example, they signed Gordon Hayward and they traded for Kyrie Irving from 2017 to 2019, around that time. But when it didn't work, they decided to move on and they got to build around Tatum and Brown. And then they also traded away Marcus Smart, who again, like Lou Dort, was a franchise legend for the Boston Celtics, yet they decided to move on from him at the right time. And of course, all these moves ended up building to a championship with support guys like Drew Holiday and Porzingis and Al Horford, for example. You can just see this pattern with a lot of the good front offices where they make tough moves to get off some money sometimes, which could be part of the Jaylen Brown idea, which I'm not sold on, but it could be. And they're just adapting to what is happening in the NBA at the right times. And you could see it pay off with OKC, with Boston winning a championship. So yeah, those are some of my thoughts about NBA front offices right now, and the good ones, the bad ones. Let me know if you agree or disagree in the comments down below. Leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. And I almost forgot, I did start a X/Twitter account, Girl Talks Hoops. It's in the description below if you want to see instant reactions, stuff like that, blah, blah, blah. Drop a follow.